Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Tadatisha Padantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangolangayate Girim Akripatamaham Vande Siguru Dinatarinam Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, by the arrangement of Leela Shakti, we have received a microphone, which this microphone enables us to go right into my phone. And the question I have for you is, can you hear me? Does it sound good? And I also forgot to get my recorder. So everybody hold where you are. Just let me know if you can hear me first. Just chat in the chat. Say, yes, I can hear you. And then I want to also record this on my recorder. Yes, you can hear me. Sounds better, right? It's quieter, doesn't it? Sound better than normal recordings? I hope so. Should be clearer and quieter. So hold on one second. I want to get my recorder because I always record audio as well. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, you know what I thought, Hare Krishna everyone? Yes, it's clear, yeah. I came across this microphone. It also means that I could, if I do videos, if we ever need to do videos when I'm just traveling in the middle of nowhere, this is quite easy. It's not the best microphone, but it works. And so something's better than nothing, right? So I was happy about that. Leela Shakti is merciful to me. So what I thought today we could talk about, we're talking about different kinds of love. Then I thought we should talk about the disciples' love for the Guru. Because I find that so interesting, because you can have a very high degree of love for the spiritual master before your love for Krishna awakens, but it's your love for your Guru that awakens your love for Krishna, and it's your love for your Guru that pleases Krishna. And it's something which is more, by Krishna's mercy, he sends a spiritual master He's in front of you. And so even though we may be full of anarthas, which would prevent us from achieving higher levels of love of Krishna, we still, by our service to our spiritual master, by our desire to please him, our desire to please Prabhupada, very early on, we can develop love for him. And it's Krishna's arrangement that it works this way, that for conditioned souls who have an awakened love of Krishna, they can immediately be engaged in love for their spiritual master. So there's a story, and I have some quotes, but I want to tell some stories that come to mind. And Satsvarupa Maharaj tells a story that his service in the early days was typing out the recordings that Prabhupada made. Prabhupada was dictating his books, and so Satsvarupa Maharaj would type, and then it would be typeset and edited and so forth. So I don't know the details, but I think Satsvarupa Maharaj did not attend the first initiation, and he was engaged in service. And then he brought the transcriptions to Prabhupada, back with the tapes. He had brought the transcriptions back with the tapes, and Prabhupada said something like, "Don't think this is ordinary service, this is love." So Prabhupada was saying that in devotional service, when we serve the Guru, it's not just like you're serving an ordinary boss, or it's not that you're just focused on the service, that you're working for him. It's not that it's impersonal, but it's actually done out of love. That's the mood. And so Srila Prabhupada, as our spiritual master, would do things to awaken our affection for him, to awaken our love for him. If you have a chance to see Prabhupada traveling with Srila Prabhupada, it's a series of videos. And if you have a chance to see 1970 in Los Angeles, maybe whatever month it is, in 1970 Los Angeles, you'll see Prabhupada entering the temple room, and all the devotees are lined up to see Prabhupada, and everyone's giving flowers, and Prabhupada's giving flowers, and Prabhupada's smiling. And something that he seemed to really like doing, of course we like doing it, and Prabhupada was reciprocating. And it was a very simple exchange. But as we know from Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami writes that devotees, one of the symptoms of exchange of love is giving gifts, even though it's a flower, it's something simple. But Prabhupada did that. The first time I was with Prabhupada in his room, he gave me prasadam from his plate, he gave it to everybody. So Prabhupada did things, there are many things he did, which would endear us to him. In the last days, Prabhupada decided he wanted to go to Govardhan, and the devotees thought if Prabhupada goes to Govardhan, then he will die. But some devotees thought, well, Prabhupada wants to go, so we shouldn't consider if it's right or wrong, but we should just do what he says. So there were sides, and they were discussing this, and obviously both sides were in anxiety, but the side that was saying he shouldn't go was in tremendous anxiety because they felt that this would be the last day Prabhupada was living. And so finally they came in and they said, Srila Prabhupada, we don't want you to go. This is causing us too much anxiety. And then Prabhupada said, no, I don't want to cause you anxiety. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said that this whole debate, whether you should go or not, and your health and so on, he said it was just bringing out our love, and Prabhupada said, yes, that is my duty, to bring out your love. So, in a sense, Prabhupada understood his duty as spiritual master was to bring out the love of his disciples, because, as they said, we didn't have love of Krishna, but we had love for Prabhupada. Or he would enable us, would act in a way that that love would naturally come. He was very kind. He was loving us, so naturally we were loving him. So you could say, in a sense, he couldn't help but love us. That's just who he is. But also at the same time conscious that by loving us, that we would love him. And doing things that would bring out that love, encouraging us, giving us even a smile or a nice letter or anything. And so that was the path, that was the way to love of Krishna. So I find it something very special about Krishna consciousness, that Krishna allows us to develop a very high level of love and affection for that person who's representing him, long before we have that level of love for him. Now, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, in the fourth chapter, 34th verse, you should approach the Guru, tadvidi pranipatena. And how should you approach him? You should approach him in surrender, pranipatena, surrender. Paripashnena, you should inquire. And sevaya, you should serve. So what differs between ordinary mundane education and Krishna consciousness education is there's service and submission. Service is not really necessary in the transference of mundane knowledge. But Prabhupada said, when the Guru is pleased, then there's this system automatically, you get Krishna's mercy. Guru is pleased, Krishna's pleased, mercy comes. So it's like a transcendental system which uplifts the disciple. So Krishna sends the Guru. So you satisfy the Guru is pleased, thank you for your service, I'm happy. Or Krishna's pleased that you're serving your Guru nicely, then you get this mercy comes down. I think that's what you hear in the background, I think, is singing water pipes, maybe? Or else it's a train, because we're right on the train track. I don't know what it is. It sounds like singing water pipes to me. Background music for our class, huh? Anyway, these things are going on. So there are stories of people who met Prabhupada and were so overwhelmed by him that became devotees on the spot. They just felt a very spontaneous attraction. And I've said many times that when I was at Prabhupada, I felt this very strong desire to serve him, and of course serving him means serving Krishna. And even though I'm not mature in devotional service as a new devotee, but that desire to serve Prabhupada, that was my saving grace. And that desire to serve him, just by his presence, was being pulled out of my heart by his mercy. So we say the Guru is merciful, the mercy of the Guru. So part of that mercy is just this natural attraction to want to please and serve him, which means that we're engaged more wholeheartedly in serving Krishna because we're serving the Guru who's serving Krishna. And the Guru is directing us to serve Krishna, and we want to follow the Guru who's telling us you serve Krishna this way. And then we become inspired to serve Krishna as if we were on higher levels of devotional service, and we're not. So it's a really special blessing. And I think any disciple of Prabhupada will tell you that all the sacrifice that they made was not because they were austere, not because they were detached or renounced, but because they just wanted to please Prabhupada. They wanted to reciprocate with what he was giving. In Bhagavatam, and Prahlad Maharaj says that I could never repay the debt to my spiritual master. He's appreciating his spiritual master Narada Muni, how he saved him, and admitting I could never repay him. Prabhupada always said we can never repay the debt to our Guru. So that's kind of a given, that the Guru he's giving us Krishna, so how can you repay anyone who's giving you Krishna? And so Prabhupada said, therefore you're eternally indebted and you're always trying to serve him. And Prabhupada used to say about his spiritual master, whenever they'd ask, he said, what can I say? He saved me. So because the disciple feels saved by the Guru, then the disciple wants to serve the Guru. He wants to repay. And whatever we can give to our spiritual master is very little compared to what our spiritual master is giving, so we always feel indebted. And that indebtedness, when Prabhupada's saying you can never pay him back, so you're always indebted eternally, so you're always serving more and more to try to pay him back. And you'll see so many devotees are they're doing so many austerities in the service of Krishna, and if you ask them why, they'll say, because I'm trying to serve Prabhupada for what he's given me. And that's the impetus, and devotees are giving up sleep, giving up comforts, living austerely, making sacrifice, traveling here and there. And it's because they want to please Prabhupada. That's why. And not necessarily that they're very elevated, they're on the stage of Bhava or something. Not necessarily, but because they have that desire to please Prabhupada, to try to repay him for what he's given. A lot of people will ask me, why is it that you haven't left Krishna consciousness? And I think part of the answer for any of us is that what Prabhupada has given us is so valuable that we're eternally indebted to pay him back. So how could we ever leave? How could we ever leave his service? So that's what Prahlad Maharaj said, how can I ever give up his service? Narada Muni has given me so much. I could never give that up. So I wanted to read a few things that I found about this topic of love for the Guru. So hold on one second. A few things. There's probably much more. There's a few things I found that we can discuss, which will indicate love both as an action and love as a feeling, because it's both. So when we've been having these discussions about love, and they're so interesting because when we talk about the word love, we tend to associate love with feeling. And so, as I've said before, a lot of devotees had feelings for Prabhupada, but those feelings didn't translate into actions. And so we want to define love for the Guru more practically, because naturally you'll have feelings for your spiritual master, you'll appreciate your spiritual master, you'll have affection for your spiritual master, but you want to get it to that point where that affection manifests in following the instructions the spiritual master has given. So this first one is very good. This is explained by a devotee. He's recollecting. This devotee's name is Amarendra, and he's recollecting a conversation. He says, a devotee asked Prabhupada, what does it mean to have love for the spiritual master? What does love of the Guru mean? So I was thinking Prabhupada would say you have all these feelings in your heart, and you feel this and you feel that, and that's what I was expecting to hear, as I was saying, because our definition of love, it tends to be more emotional. It's what we're feeling. And that is true, but it's not all of it. So Prabhupada said, love for the Guru means you have taken initiation, you have made a vow to the spiritual master, you've taken fire sacrifice, you keep your vow. That is love. Interesting, right? Because Prabhupada saw that there were devotees who were saying, Jai Prabhupada, I love you, and so forth, but they weren't following their vows that they made to Prabhupada. So then Prabhupada wanted to be specific, that love means that you've made these vows. So if you expand that idea, you could say love means obedience to the order of the Guru. So how can you say, I love my Guru, and disobey his order? That wouldn't make sense, right? So Prabhupada's making that point. So Amarendra says, when I heard that, again, that was one of those statements that Prabhupada would make, where all the devotees were just taken completely by surprise. Prabhupada's definition of love, that it was not a feeling, but keeping our vow that we made to him when we got initiated. And that is how we show whether we really love him or not. So that's really important. Because sometimes we'll define love as sentiment, or we'll use the word sentiment in a negative sense. And sentiment in a negative sense would be you express a lot of emotion and feeling, but you don't really follow what the spiritual master wants. So, or anybody wants, not just the spiritual master. So defining love by obedience is very important. Defining love by execution of the orders of the one you're loving It's very important to understand that definition. Otherwise, if you're not clear on the definition, you may think you have love when you don't. When you're feeling this, I'm feeling that love, but that love should manifest in actions. That love should manifest in the form of execution of the instructions of the spiritual master. So it's like Prabhupada has given us so many instructions. And to say that I have a little love for Prabhupada means that I should become attached to following those instructions. Some of the instructions we don't like. Some of the instructions are difficult. And some of the instructions that Prabhupada may give us sometimes may not seem directly Krishna conscious. To attend to material affairs, for example, when we may tend to be neglectful. And so love for Prabhupada would be to mean, in that case, to tend to those affairs. So we just need to be clear on all the instructions Prabhupada has given, all the instructions our spiritual master gives, and then to understand that the real expression or the highest expression of that love is how can I follow those orders. And then, as I said, from that, there's this mercy which opens up within our heart and enables us to understand Krishna consciousness. So love for Guru is like, it opens up the mercy gates. It's an automatic process by which we get realization and understanding. Why? Because what mercy does is it takes us to a level of Krishna consciousness in which we could not reach ourselves. So let's say I could reach to this level. Mercy will take me to this level. But I have to get to this level to open up the gate of mercy, and then I enter that room, and then there's an escalator, and it takes me up. So mercy, often what mercy is doing, is filling the gap between our ideals and where we're at. And we can't get there on our own. So oftentimes you do service, you please your spiritual master, you please Prabhupada. That you feel very good, you feel very satisfied, that's a gift, that's the mercy. Or you get so many realizations, that's the mercy. That's how it works. You're just, sometimes the realizations are flowing. You're understanding so much about Krishna consciousness, or you're feeling so much about Krishna consciousness. And you don't even know where it's coming, it's just all a gift, it's just flowing. Or a desire, just a very strong desire to serve, a very strong desire to help people, a very strong desire to spread the mission of Srila Prabhupada. And sometimes you don't even know where it's coming from. It's just amazing. That's mercy. And that means you've done something to please Krishna, please your spiritual master. And sometimes Prabhupada was asked, well, how do you know your spiritual master is pleased? But Krishna knows. So it's not that you have to write your spiritual master and say, I did this to please you. Krishna knows. So it's a transcendental system. And mercy is coming from above, and it comes down, comes through the disciplic succession, and you're following the orders. If you follow the order of your guru, that means you're following Prabhupada's order, that means you're following Bhaktisiddhanta's order, because it's all coming down. So Krishna arranges through this transcendental system that when the spiritual master is pleased, you get mercy. That's just how it works. So, let's read some more. This is from a conversation. This is a really interesting conversation. This is from Prabhupada. Yes, if one simply comes to that platform of spontaneous love for the spiritual master. When we speak of spontaneous love, we're speaking of a very elevated state of Krishna consciousness. And now Prabhupada's talking about spontaneous love for the spiritual master, which would manifest on a lower state of Krishna consciousness. It wouldn't be coming from a higher state. So, isn't that interesting? That you can use the word spontaneous love, which technically is not something we feel we can achieve or have achieved or would achieve in our present state. And now we're talking about it in relation to the spiritual master, which which is not something that I'm aware of that's described in Shastra. When you speak of spontaneous love, you're talking about Krishna. Here Prabhupada's talking about it towards the Guru, which is quite interesting. So, if one simply comes to that platform of spontaneous love for the spiritual master, then very quickly he will get love of Krishna. And all his hankerings and lamentations of life will be finished. That is the process. Like when two friends meet, if the friend is also with his dog, the gentleman pats his dog, is it not? So the friend becomes automatically pleased, his dog being patted. I've seen in your country, when I used to walk in Regent's Park. So it is like that. Spiritual master is the pet dog of Krishna. And if he is pleased, so Krishna is also pleased. That is the process. Also, but that's true if you please a devotee, not just the spiritual master. So it doesn't matter on what level the spiritual master is. The spiritual master is Krishna's representative. He's deputed by Krishna to accept service from his disciples. So if the disciples render service, Krishna is pleased. If you render service to any devotee, Krishna is pleased. You render service to your local leaders, Krishna is pleased. It's not just the spiritual master. So that's the symptom. And the more you love, it's awkward to love the spiritual master and not love other devotees. That's not what we want. We don't want that position. But anyway, here Prabhupada's talking about the spiritual master. This is another topic. Love your guru, hate everybody else. That's not loving your guru, obviously. Your guru wants you to love everyone. But it again goes back to that initial point I made, that if we develop affection for our spiritual master, then, and Prabhupada says here, that love becomes spontaneous, meaning that we naturally want to serve without any motivation, without any other consideration. And you see that. It's so common for the disciple to want to serve their spiritual master. Just do what will ever please the spiritual master. Then Prabhupada says that spontaneous love leads to love of Krishna. So again, that's really Krishna's mercy, that Krishna made that arrangement, because it's so natural to love the spiritual master. Prabhupada, yes. In the 7th canto, Narada says that a student living at a Gurukul should first learn to control his senses. Then he should learn to act for the benefit of his guru, not for his own benefit. He should be just like a servant. The master orders and the servant carries out the order. A brahmachari must be humble. Although he is not getting any money, he should accept many hardships out of love for the spiritual master. He should accept many hardships out of love for the spiritual master. He should work just like you are working. I am not paying you, but you are working. Why? Out of love for me. This is the basic principle. A brahmachari should think, my spiritual master is my best friend, therefore I must render service to him. Brahmachari training is to render menial service to the spiritual master. That's the training we get, or we should get, in the beginning of life. And why should I serve him? Serve him out of love. Now what does that mean? It means, as Prabhupada said here, you're not thinking about yourself. What did Prabhupada say? He should control his senses. He should act for the benefit of his guru, not for his own benefit. So he's learning at a young age to not act for his own benefit, which is the way everyone is acting. Everyone's conditioned to act that way, and parents and society are furthering that conditioning by encouraging young people to get ahead, to become successful, and so on. There's nothing wrong with that kind of encouragement, but what it encourages is that the most important thing is you and your happiness and your success. And in the Gurukula, the most important thing is the happiness and the success of the spiritual master. It's a different way of thinking. And so that creates, at least I've seen personally, not just speaking philosophically, but I've seen personally, it creates a mood in which young boys when they're trained that way, they just naturally serve. It's how they think. They've been raised that way. Always think about others. Not only the guru, because you're thinking of the guru's benefit, that trains you to think about the benefit of others, especially the benefit of elders, seniors. So it's a really good way of thinking. It's very selfless. So that's what love for the spiritual master means. You become a humble servant, and we need to become humble servants. That's required for our spiritual advancement. Right? So that's good, isn't it? I can do some humble service for my spiritual master. I can please him, and then I get mercy, his mercy, Krishna's mercy, if I can please him. And that way, I'm not thinking about myself. Prabhupada sometimes, he mentioned that one mother had come to the temple. And she said that, I'm so surprised that my son is so willing and enthusiastic to do all these services, especially cleaning the temple. She said, because I could never get him to do those things. Not saying that he didn't love his mother, but objectively, at this point in his life, his love for Prabhupada was greater, more intense. And so, out of love for Prabhupada, we did so many things that we were too lazy to do before we were devotees, or were not inclined to do. And so for us, it wasn't about sweeping the temple. It was about serving Prabhupada, and that's where the inspiration comes. It's about serving the one you love, and then any service you could do for the one you love is relishable. So again, that central point of pleasing Prabhupada was what was giving us our power to serve Krishna. Okay, I'll read one more. You could ask some questions. We have some discussion. Only the unalloyed servants of the spiritual masters, Sri Rupa and Sri Swarup, can understand the mystery of worshipping the Lord. A devotee who has firm faith in and love for the spiritual master's lotus feet is called an unalloyed servant. The Vedas declare, Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata gurao. Tasyaite katipte hiarta prakashante mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. So, again, they're using this word, talking about this idea of unalloyed service, unalloyed devotional service to Krishna. It's always unalloyed devotional service to Krishna, pure devotional service, service without motivation. Here, Prabhupada's talking about unalloyed service to the spiritual master. So the point is that's where it begins. And my heart may be full of contamination, it may be full of envy and greed and selfishness, but if I sincerely want to serve my spiritual master without motivation, just because he's given me everything, then Prabhupada's calling that pure unalloyed devotional service. That's amazing. That means, in that sense, we could start with pure unalloyed devotional service right from the very beginning of Krishna consciousness. Before we have pure unalloyed devotional service, we're being said here, we're engaged in pure unalloyed devotional service. That's such a gift of Srila Prabhupada. It's really such a gift that Prabhupada would come and take our service. We're not worthy of his service. We are fallen souls, we're contaminated. But he takes service on behalf of Krishna. That is also Krishna's gift, that he would send Srila Prabhupada to take that service, because if Krishna didn't care for us, he wouldn't send. And then the other thing is, it's so interesting if you understand the Vedic system, that Vedic knowledge is not meant to come without being instructed by a spiritual master. So You're never meant to learn it from a book. You're always meant to learn it from someone who can explain it, and you're always meant to understand it, as I said, by someone you're serving, because you won't understand it if you don't serve. So Krishna sends Vedas, then he sends the Guru, and then the Guru explains the Vedas, and then you serve the Guru, by which you understand the message in the Vedas. Otherwise, without that process of service in devotion, you don't understand it. So right from the beginning, that process of unalloyed devotional service, it begins, and it's just so natural to want to render pure service to a pure devotee, because pure devotee is attractive, and serving that pure devotee is relishable. And so many of us, even though we undergo so many difficulties in our devotional services, we go through crises in our temples, we have to deal with so many things that even maybe sometimes in the material world we wouldn't have to deal with. But there's a certain sweetness there, because that sweetness is in service to Prabhupada. And because we're serving Prabhupada, there's that feeling of affection and connection and love, or we're serving our spiritual master. So even though externally the situation is difficult, internally we're feeling something extremely sweet, extremely relishable, extremely special, which is that I'm serving a pure devotee. And it doesn't matter how I'm serving. Or like I was saying before, you're sweeping a temple, sweeping a floor. It's a very, very simple activity. It's so many people in the material world are sweeping floors and nothing's going on in their heart. It's just a job, or it's painful, it's boring, it's difficult. And I get to sweep a floor. You imagine, I get to sweep a floor in Prabhupada's room. How relishable is that? You're cleaning the pure devotee's room. You get to put flower vases on his desk. You get to wash his bathroom. It's so sweet, it's so special because of that affection. But when there's no affection, there's nothing special. It's just boring. It's dry. One time Prabhupada said that if you worship the deity and there's no bhava, there's no emotion, then it just becomes idol worship. You feel like you're worshiping a stone. So it could be the same thing with the spiritual master. If there's no affection, if there's no love, then you just feel like, it's like work. And that's what work means. You have a boss, you don't love him, there's no pleasure there. But like Prabhupada said, you're serving me and I'm not paying you. So why would you do that unless you love me? You wouldn't serve me without pay unless you love me. Nobody's going to serve in a company because they love the boss. They want a paycheck. They don't get the paycheck, they're not going to do it. So Krishna sends this person who extracts from our heart affection. That affection becomes our wealth in devotional service. So you could never have too much affection or too much love for the spiritual master. It's actually what we're supposed to have. More and more and more. And affection for the devotees. And affection amongst the devotees. It's all our real wealth. It's what inspires us to want to serve. I've seen in situations where devotees have a lot of affection for one another, where they get along really well. There's this energy that's amazing, and everybody becomes super, super inspired by that relationship, and they become extremely motivated to serve and to make self-sacrifice. Can you close that door? Thank you. They become extremely motivated to make this sacrifice just because the relationship is so good, and you want to please the other devotee, you want to do something that will inspire them, and it's out of affection. You want to please them, you want to see them happy. Whereas, as Prabhupada once said, we're making all this sacrifice to distribute books. Sometimes it's so difficult. You go out and you're dealing with people that are just very hard. You're dealing with weather that's very, very cold, very severe. And there's so much trouble in producing the books, stocking them, distributing them. It's not easy. And Prabhupada said, why are we doing this? And he said, we're doing this because we want to see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur smile. We're just doing it to make him happy. So why did Prabhupada come to America? He's just doing it to make him happy. He asked him, if I love my Guru, I should do this. My Guru asked me to come to America. Do I love him? If I love him, I come, I do it. And then Prabhupada said, I never felt separated from my Guru. Why did Prabhupada say that? Because the only reason he was in New York is because his Guru asked him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in New York. There's no way, there's no reason Prabhupada would come to New York and make all those sacrifices and go through all those austerities unless his spiritual master wanted him to do it. So it was out of intense affection for his spiritual master that he did it. So therefore, how could he ever forget his spiritual master? Because everything he was doing, he would have never done on his own. And in the same way, we're doing so many services, and if we think, why am I doing this? If we're thinking, I'm doing this to please my spiritual master, I'm doing this to please Prabhupada, then you can never forget your spiritual master. Because through everything you're doing, you're connected with him. That's why you do it. That's your motive. That's your connection. Even if it's, you say, well, what if I just have a service in the temple and it's not direct service to my spiritual master? But this is the movement of Prabhupada, so it's direct service through your spiritual master to Prabhupada. And everything you do to please Prabhupada, your spiritual master, obviously, he's going to be happy, right? So it's all lined up properly. It's all service to Guru. It's all service that's pleasing your authorities all the way up the disciplic succession. You chant your rounds, you rise early, you do your morning service and puja. That's all pleasing your spiritual master because he's handing you the orders that Prabhupada gave for you to do that. And when you do that, then you please him, you please Prabhupada, you please Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, like that. For example, one time Prabhupada gave a lecture and he said, the Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he asked us to distribute books. And he said, if you distribute books, you'll get my blessings and you'll get his blessings because it's his order. So he said, be doubly blessed. And then he said, the grandfather is more merciful than the father. So you get double blessings for book distribution. So if we follow the order of our Guru, which is the order of Prabhupada, which is the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, or the order of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you could say you're getting double blessings, triple blessings, quadruple blessings. So that's the amazing aspect of devotional service, that as the order comes down, then you're getting doubly, triply blessed. You can, if you distribute Prabhupada's books, you can feel there's a blessing, you can feel there's a reciprocation. You can feel Srila Prabhupada is present. He's happy. You can feel that. So when you're pleasing your spiritual master, you feel that. You'll feel satisfied, you'll feel inspired, you'll feel enlivened. It's just a natural transcendental, it's an invisible and natural transcendental process. So why don't we stop? I mean, there's so much you could say, but the main point I was really trying to communicate is how our spiritual life is very much founded in that guru-disciple relationship of which is based on love, and love is based on following. And as you follow, you get the mercy, and the mercy elevates you to a position in devotional service where you're very inspired and you're doing very well. And sometimes, if we're not doing well in Krishna consciousness, then naturally we'll think, I need mercy, or I'm lacking mercy, or I'm maybe not following the order of my spiritual master, I'm not getting the mercy. Sometimes even devotees weren't chanting their rounds, but they were engaged fully in serving Prabhupada and doing something that was very important. So Prabhupada would give them mercy. He'd say, don't worry, you'll have the mercy. You'll be able to go on, I'll give you the mercy. One devotee wasn't chanting his rounds, he was too busy. And it was actually Prabhupada's servant. And he said, Prabhupada, I'd like to give up this service so that I can chant my rounds. And Prabhupada said, just continue the service, I'll maintain you. So, he told Prabhupada, I think he was only chanting 4 rounds a day. And Prabhupada said, just do the service, I will maintain you. So if the spiritual master is pleased, then even you're not following the principles, he can maintain you in any position. So the importance of pleasing the spiritual master is it's essential, it's a foundational principle to our spiritual strength. Okay, Sita Lila says, we read Prabhupada's books and get knowledge directly from them. So is there a... And then it ended. What if the motive for service is fear of suffering in the material world more than to... I think you say more than to serve the spiritual master. And the first one, I have to figure out what you're saying. First one, we read Prabhupada's books and we get knowledge directly from them. So is there a... Yeah. So, you read Prabhupada's books, you get direct knowledge from them, and Prabhupada is pleased that you're reading his books. And so the question is, can I understand Prabhupada's books directly? I guess that's the question. Or do I need someone to explain them? And the answer is yes and yes. Prabhupada has wrote his books for all of us. And but at the same time, that they would be elucidated, illuminated by his disciples or grand disciples or great grand disciples. So both are true. You have access, and you can have greater access by discussion with learned devotees, realized devotees. I don't know if that's what you're asking. I think that's what you're asking. And then the other question, what is the motive for service, is fear of suffering. That's okay, but it's not the highest motive. And as we're saying here, it's not only pleasing your Diksha Guru, it could be anyone. Say, I want to help somebody. I want to serve them out of my desire to please them, to make them happy, to follow them. So that's a higher motive. It's a higher, your motive could be suffering, but on a comparative level, the motive to become free from suffering is lowest. Sometimes we say that's called jnana mishra bhakti, bhakti mixed mishra with jnana, or the desire to become free from suffering. So if that's what motivates you to be Krishna conscious, that's okay, because it's motivating you. But it's not the highest form of motivation. Purity to please one's guru is a higher form of motivation. To please the Vaishnavas is a higher form of motivation than to become free from suffering. And so everything that we're discussing in this class kind of leads us to the understanding of how essential it is to want to reciprocate with what the spiritual master has given us. And that love for the spiritual masters is foundational to developing love for Krishna. And so it shouldn't just be service out of duty. Shastra says we should serve the Guru with affection. I forget what verse it is, but that verse is there. We should serve the Guru with affection. That's the proper mode. Or serve the Vaishnavas with affection. Alana says, is there a chance we may not develop a connection with the direct spiritual master? And then I can't read the rest of it. The connection with the spiritual master is not material. So that's important to understand. That you can't see it as like I have to be there face to face, connecting, looking at, hearing, touching, hugging. That's nice if you have that association, it's inspiring. But the connection goes far beyond that, because the connection is not bound by those limitations of personal presence. And you'll find, like when I was describing Prabhupada's experience coming to America, I think we could say that Prabhupada probably felt closest to his spiritual master when he was engaged when he came to America. It's probably the time he felt the closest. And of course his spiritual master had left, so it's about, I think, 3 years previously, he had left. So Prabhupada's coming 33 years after his spiritual master left, and we can say he felt very close. And in fact, I told the story once where Prabhupada said, I called my spiritual master to come see all the devotees. There were so many new devotees. So Prabhupada said, I called him to come see all the new devotees. So that's amazing, that they'd had such a deep connection. And Prabhupada described how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, after he left, he came to Prabhupada twice in a dream with the same message. So we don't think of the connection with the spiritual master as being bound by time and space or proximity. It's much different than that. It's a connection which is based on service. It's a connection which is based on love. It's a connection where the feeling is that whatever I'm doing, I'm only doing it because that's what he wants. Just like, I tell devotees that Prabhupada said we should get up early in the morning. And I have a policy. Any temple I live in, I'll always get up and follow the program no matter what time I go to sleep, because that's what Prabhupada wanted. And so a lot of times when I'm going to bed thinking it's very late and really my body could use more sleep, I think Prabhupada wants me to get up. I don't want to get up. I think it would be better. And sometimes in certain situations when my body's worn out, I'm not at a temple, or I go to bed very late, then I will get up later. Not necessarily that I'm sleeping longer, but I won't be able to get up at 4 o'clock. But generally, in ordinary circumstances, I will. And I'll get up whether I'm feeling like it or not, simply by the thought that this is what Prabhupada wants me to do. And my life is directed by him, and therefore I do what he wants. And it gives us tremendous power for us. It enables us to do things which ordinarily we may not be able to do. That's the power of love. We say love is the most powerful force in the universe. So the power of love that we have for our spiritual master enables us to make sacrifices, to give up personal interest. It enables us to do austerities that ordinarily we would never be able to do. And then we think, well, how could we do it? And we realize it's because my spiritual master wants me to do it. That's why I'm doing it. Otherwise, on my own, I probably couldn't do this, or I wouldn't want to do it, or it would be really difficult to do it, or it would be difficult to do it steadily. I can't. So when I'm tempted to do something that's not Krishna conscious, then I think I can't do that because my spirit, even I want to do it, but my spiritual master has ordered me not to do it. Therefore, I don't do it. So there's this love. This is synonymous with this chastity, that this is what he wants me to do. And there are many things that I would like to do that I don't do because I know Prabhupada wouldn't be pleased with it. And so the power to resist comes from the power of love, the power of the desire to please the Guru. And so then the pleasure of the Guru becomes more important than my own pleasure. And that's how you advance in Krishna consciousness. And that was the point we were reading before. Because if that's not there, then my own pleasure becomes the center of my life. And I don't have to worry so much about what I want. I have the order of my Guru, what he wants, and that's what directs my life. And that's my choices are made around that. And so I'm not choosing whether this is going to make me happy or not. I'm just choosing whether or not my spiritual master wants it. And sometimes I may choose something that makes me happy because I know my spiritual master wants me to be happy. I know my spiritual master wants me to be enlivened in devotional service, and I know if I do this, I'll be inspired and enlivened. But still, it's not selfish in the sense that it's within the context of what would be pleasing to my spiritual master. You see? So that the whole problem that we face in the material world is we're always thinking, how can I be happy? That's our meditation. And then as soon as you start thinking, how can I make my spiritual master be happy? How can I please him? That's actually when you become happiest. Because we're never happy thinking about ourselves. We're always happy thinking about what I can do to further the mission of my spiritual master, what would make him happy. And there's so many things that we did for Prabhupada that we were actually incapable of doing. And the reason we were successful is because we knew Prabhupada wanted it, and so somehow or other, out of love, we just figured it out. It wasn't, we weren't mental. It was just, we had to figure it out. Because this is what Prabhupada wants. Prabhupada said, I want this. And then the mind just clicks into a mode of not, how are we going to do this? It's just do it. Or there was no doubt. So I think that's really the essential power of affection, that you want to do it and therefore you get it done, even when you're not so qualified. Or you make the attempt. You don't have fear of making the attempt, thinking I'm not qualified. You're just thinking, this would please my spiritual master. I'd really like to do this. Like when Shyama Sundar, he wanted to meet George Harrison. So he didn't think about the obstacles. He just thought, this would be so good for Prabhupada's movement if I could meet him. And that's all he was thinking. He wasn't thinking, this is impossible, nobody meets George Harrison. What are the odds of meeting him? He just thought, no, this would please Prabhupada. So if we're in that consciousness, we can do amazing things because we want to achieve something to please Prabhupada, and that there's this amazing power that comes. Or we want to achieve something to please our spiritual master. And walls start falling down, and limitations start disintegrating. Because you can't have those limitations if you're trying to achieve something that may be difficult to achieve. So that's why I say that the most powerful force is the power of love, because I saw how that force of love for Prabhupada's disciples, for him, I saw how that force of love was empowering devotees to do amazing things. And when that love lessens, they lose that power. They can't do it. Even they're the same person with the same material abilities, but they can't achieve what they achieved. Because the power of love it's the inspiration, it's the drive, it's the force, it's what empowers one to do what one normally couldn't do on one's own. That's what happens. So you end up making sacrifices, you end up doing austerities, you end up just achieving things that were virtually impossible otherwise. And you even see that in the material world where there's love. Right? Isn't it? So, okay, I'm going to go back. We read Prabhupada's books, we get knowledge directly from them. So is there a chance we may not develop a connection with the direct spiritual master? No. Because does it need to be rectified? I'm not sure what needs to be rectified. Like if you read Prabhupada's books, is there a chance you won't develop a connection with your own spiritual master? Well, you can say there's always a chance, but your spiritual master is very happy when you're reading Prabhupada's books. So by reading Prabhupada's books, you are connected to your spiritual master because your spiritual master wants you to read them. And your spiritual master certainly wants you to be connected. And you're connected to Prabhupada through your spiritual master, and that's what your spiritual master is trying to do, is connect you to Prabhupada. So if you get connected, you got connected through him, so it can't be separate. And when you are connected, he's happy. And Prabhupada gave his books for you. And your spiritual master will help you better understand them. And if you don't understand them, you can ask him. And in Prabhupada's books, he says, accept a spiritual master. So the fact that it works together, Prabhupada's instructions and your spiritual master's instructions. They work together. And as I said, your spiritual master's instructions is to read Prabhupada's books. So, like Prabhupada would say, if you think of Krishna, you think of me. If you think of me, you think of Krishna, because we're together. So you think of Prabhupada's disciple, then Prabhupada's there. If you think of Prabhupada, then his disciples are there. So you really can't make that distinction. They're not separate. Wherever your Prabhupada is, your spiritual master is. Wherever your spiritual master is, Prabhupada is. So why are you reading Prabhupada's books? You're reading them on the order of your spiritual master. He wants you to read them. He's telling you to read them. So then, even though you're connecting directly with Prabhupada through his words. It's on the order of your spiritual master, and by the mercy of the spiritual master that you're doing it. A disciple thinks that everything that's happening is the mercy of my spiritual master. So the fact that I can understand anything that Prabhupada writes, the disciple will think that's the mercy of my Guru. The fact that I have these books, it's the mercy of my Guru. So that's also part of the understanding. That I'm engaged in this process of Shravanam, hearing, that is the blessing of my Guru. So, when you say does it need to be rectified, I'm not sure if I don't think there's anything wrong, but maybe you meant something else. Okay, Eddie says, is the initiation for establish the bond with the spiritual master? It's to formalize it. The bond is established long before initiation. If you don't have the bond, then you shouldn't get initiated, because the initiation is formalizing. We say initiation is formalizing. What is it formalizing? It has to formalize something which already exists, right? So the initiation is formalizing something, it's formalizing the connection, it's formalizing the bond. Just like you don't get married to someone until there is a connection. And the marriage is formalizing the connection. The marriage is not to create the connection. I mean, in some traditional systems of marriage, maybe you could say the marriage is creating the connection. But generally, the connection is there first, and when the couple feels the connection is good, they feel right about it, it's proper, then they formalize that connection. So, like Prabhupada said, the first time I saw my spiritual master, I accepted him as my spiritual master. Not officially, but within my heart. So that's where it starts. So before Prabhupada was initiated, he didn't think Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was not his guru. And the most essential aspect of the guru is their instruction, siksha. So if you are hearing from someone regularly and you have faith in that person and you're trying to follow their instructions, that person is your guru, long before you officially get initiated. A lot of times devotees who are not initiated, who have not chosen a guru, have great faith in and are hearing from someone regularly, and that person will probably become their guru, and long before they recognize that person as their guru, they actually are accepting them as their guru because they're hearing, but they just don't realize that that's the person. Sometimes they do realize it, sometimes they don't. But from that point, once you realize it, then initiation is at that point where you want to commit and say, okay, I've been following these principles, I've been serving you, and now I want to make this official. By committing, I'm officially now accepted by Krishna and my spiritual master, and I am now declaring to myself and to the other devotees and to Krishna and my spiritual master that I am committed to chanting 16 rounds and following these 4 principles for the rest of my life. So it's definitely a formalization of something that exists. And if something doesn't exist, you can't formalize that which doesn't exist. And so that would be the wrong consciousness in which to take initiation. So yes, you should have the bond long before. Sita Lila said, I had a quote of Vishnu Maharaj saying to one of his disciples, send me, serve me. And then it ends. And Sita Lila, can you write in the next another chat? When can you have your initiation? When you're ready. Minimum 1 year. Following the 4 regs, 16 rounds, and getting some recommendation from a senior devotee that knows you. And when you become a disciple. Disciple means, now, I'm not saying you're not a disciple. Disciple means you whatever the Guru says, you're willing to do that. That's what it means to be a disciple. So when you're steady in your devotional service, when you're connected with your spiritual master on that level of faith that what he says is true and I do it, then you get approval of authorities in ISKCON. Then you get it. So you don't have to rush into it. You do it when you're ready, or when your spiritual master thinks you're ready. There may be things your spiritual master sees in you, and he'll say, I don't think you're ready because of A, B, and C. So that's also there. So Mahavishnu Maharaj said, serve me in such a way that I don't know that you are serving me. Which is often the case, right? I mean, Prabhupada knew his disciples were distributing books, but he didn't know necessarily which ones were doing it. So, but Krishna knows. That's the point. So I think also what Mahavishnu Swami meant is don't boast. When the attitude of a Vaishnava is he doesn't go around telling people what he's done. I've done so many things. I've chanted so many rounds. He's humble. But we want to please the spiritual master, so we tell the spiritual master the services we are doing to please him. We're telling him we're doing the things that he asked us to do, not to toot our own horns, but to show him so that he will be pleased and bless us with his mercy. Please bless me. You asked me to do this, I did this. Are you happy? Are you pleased? That's the attitude, that's all. That's the force of your bhakti. If you have that, you won't have any problem in Krishna consciousness, because that desire to serve and please the Guru will always edify everything you do. It will always keep you on the path. It will keep you out of trouble. It will keep you going. It will keep pushing you. The power of love will just push you. You'll never stop. And if you lose that, then you'll see your whole level of devotion will go down. And that was the point we were making in the beginning. The level of your devotion to your Guru then becomes the level of your devotion to Krishna, because there's no difference between serving Guru and Krishna. And even though the focus is on serving Guru, and you might think, I have no love of Krishna, still, that's accepted as your service to Krishna. With whatever intensity and determination and devotion you have in serving your Guru, it's accepted in that same intensity as service to Krishna. Right? So, is that good? Are we okay? Is there anything else you'd like to ask? We have gone about an hour and 10 minutes maybe? So, I think we can end here. Unless you're dying to say something or ask another question. We are in Amsterdam today. This is June 20th, 2016. And it's a good day to stay inside. It's cold and rainy. Some places like Amsterdam, they're up north, so in the summer you can get winter, which would be winter weather in California. You can get that in the summer. And yesterday and Saturday we did workshops, 2 workshops on humility. 1 workshop, 2 days. It's amazing, amazing topic. The devotees were pleased. It was very nice. We had a nice kirtan last night. I think it's on YouTube. You can go check. 1 hour is not enough. Yeah, it's a big topic. So anyway, we will see you next week. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.